So this session is going to be around 20 minutes, okay? And this is a 200 level session, so I want to make sure you are in the right place. A 200 level session is not going to be very technical. My goal in the next 20 minutes is also to give you questions and resources that you can follow up on your own, so you'll be able to know more about this topic. I'm going to speak about two things. First is privacy, and the second is compliance, which is very hot topics right now for Gen AI. My name is Ivo Pinto. I'm a principal solution architect at AWS, and I work mostly with software companies in Europe. First of all, I'd like to show this slide, and I would ask for a show of hands. Which of you have seen this slide before? Not that many people. I think we've introduced it this year in Reinforce, so around June. And this is kind of like a mental model for us to position an app that someone is developing, right? It has 5 scopes from left to right. Starting in scope 1, these are the more, let's say, simple apps. These are just apps you consume, for example, ChatGPT. You guys go there and that's it. Then we have scope 2, sort of like the same, but there's already an agreement in between. Let's, for example, ChatGPT the paid version, there's an enterprise agreement, there's some terms and conditions there. And then as you start moving, you get into scope 3. These are pre-trained models. So that's, for example, when you use Bedrock, right? You build an application and you are calling that model. Then you have scope 4. Here you have a model, but you're already using some of your data to make it better at doing something. Maybe you want to adapt the domain. Maybe you want to teach it something that it doesn't do that well. And then on scope 5, you have self-trained models, right? From my experience and from the experience we deal with many customers at AWS, most people fall within scope 2 and 3. Some folks are in scope 4, but we don't see that many people in scope 5, okay? In terms of privacy and compliance, I would tell you to move away from scope 1, right? Usually, the terms of scope 1 applications use your data for improvement of products, stuff like that. There's really only an end user licensing agreement, and this is not usually recommended for enterprise apps. Why do I show this slide? Because it's the mental model we're also going to use throughout the presentations, because privacy and compliance concerns and the things you need to take into consideration are different depending where you are within these scopes. So starting with scope 1 and 2, so consumer and enterprise apps, the first question you need to ask yourself is who has access to the data and why? And this is not very different for when you are building any other type of application, right? Although it's a Gen AI application, and these are newer things, I would say, you add this consideration building any application, right? Let's say, forget about Gen AI, you're building an application, you want to know who's using your data and why, right? All the regulation around it, for example, if you are in Europe, GDPR, SOC 2, anything like that already asks this question. So that maintains it. But when you are moving to Gen AI, you're going to have new things, like, for example, the prompts, right? Prompts and responses. And when you are using these apps where you don't really control them, it's a product you buy, like I said, like GPT, PartyRock, all of those, you need to take into consideration how are they using your prompts and how are they using your responses. And that's going to differ, but it will always be explicit either in the end user licensing agreement or in the contract, if it's an enterprise app. Then you need to take into consideration if they are storing and processing your data. And I know this is very focused also in the EU laws. There's like data residency and this type of considerations, but this is very important, right? Even if you are a US-based company, if you have EU customers, Australian customers, right? That's going to apply to you. It does not matter where your company is based. If your product has this type of users, you're going to have to take it into consideration. So when you are using models that are not your own, and you are providing those, you need to ask yourself, okay, are they storing my data? If so, where? And how, really, right? Are they encrypting it? Again, nothing, let's say, rocket science. This is something that you were probably already considering before Gen AI, but it still applies here. Nonetheless, when you start moving the scopes, you reach to pre-trained and fine-tuned models, right? And although the first 2 questions are the same, the second one has a slight nuance, right? Which is, how are you using the prompts? Because now you are no longer offloading this to a model provider, right? So that responsibility falls on you. It's no longer just checking the licensing agreement, okay, how are they using my stuff? It's actually, how am I using this stuff? And likewise, where are you storing it? Where are you processing it? And for scope 4 applications, meaning you fine-tune, there's a very important consideration, right? Which is, you fine-tune it with data. Where do you find that data? And if you found it somewhere, do you have the right to use it? Because just because it's public on the internet does not give you the right to use it in a commercial application. And that's a very interesting nuance that some folks sometimes just let it slip, and then there's a lot of considerations around. And the last one is again, there's any regulation that I need to take into consideration, and that applies to the whole workload, either Gen AI or not. That doesn't change. For the last Scope 5.1, you are the service provider, so these aspects are even further, go even further, right? You are responsible for everything, right? From training the model, from all the data, including the training data. And this is no longer a small piece of data. When you fine-tune a model, you're going to use a couple samples, usually supervised samples, not that much. When you are training a large language model, you're going to use a lot of data that you probably scraped from many different places. Make sure all those places are giving you the right to use it, and don't forget that if you don't have the right to use it, take it before. Likewise, think that taking it or not using it is much simpler than taking it after you train the model, right? If you train the model with a lot of data and now you want to take part of it away, it's very hard. There's not even a way to do it, right? And it's going to be very expensive to retrain all of that, so start with it in mind. And lastly, there's a lot of the word guardrails flowing around. Make sure when you are the model provider, right, that you're validating these outputs and the inputs, both for jailbreaks and this type of things, but also for toxicity and making sure your model doesn't say anything that you're going to be liable for, right? Moving to the fun stuff, compliance, no more privacy, right? This is the number one question I get the most. Is my workload compliant? This was before Gen AI as well, right? Nothing that changed that much. But they come to us, not only to me, to AWS, and customers say, okay, I have this is my diagram, it's a very nice diagram. Is it compliant? Can be to SOC 2, can be to something else. And the answer is, I don't know, and even if I knew, I couldn't answer, because it would make me liable, right? You have to ask your own legal department, and they are the only ones that can give you legal advice. But this is not to say that we cannot help you, right? So the answer, if you ask us, okay, can you help me to achieve SOC 2? Can you help me to map SOC 2 controls to AWS services or features? That we can do, right? We have security specialists, compliance specialists, that we can do, but we cannot be your lawyer, sort of speak, okay? Hands up, who knows what is a CCOE? Okay, nobody knows, that's not great. A CCOE is usually a specialized team within a company that employs best practices and helps people to adopt the cloud, right? It's a coined term, it's very famous, I put a blog there, you can follow those resources. But my recommendation for the compliance piece is that you enhance your CCOE with legal teams as well, or at least with a legal person. Usually CCOE has engineering, sometimes it's product, HR even, but many times doesn't have legal, and you will see throughout the talk that legal is becoming more and more required, right, in these discussions. So the rest of the talk is going to be structured in this way. So we see there's a lot of regulation, right? First of all, there's a lot of regulation, and it changes every day. By the time I finish this talk, probably someone changed some regulation. So I will not tell you about specific laws and regulations, also they depend per country. I'll tell you 6 themes that we see emerging throughout. A lot of it is focused on the UI Act, because it's one of the big ones, but also some of the regulation in the US. The first theme is data privacy. I talk a little bit about data privacy in the scope 1, 2, 3, and 5, but data privacy can be really summarized with one sentence, very simple sentence. Don't record stuff you don't need. And this applies for Gen AI, but also without, right? So let's say you don't need if the person is a male or a female, right? Don't record it. Nowadays, I see, for example, for many job applications, they are requiring you to fulfill a profile. They ask you all sorts of questions. Where do you live? What's your postal code? Gender? If you don't need it, don't ask, don't store it. You're going to save you a lot of trouble just doing that. Nonetheless, I like to give you resources for every team. The first one is very important. One is one from the UK, and they basically give you it's a framework with 8 questions, okay? And it's 8 questions you really should ask yourself when you're building a Gen AI workload. It is going to give you a really good idea of, are you storing what you need? Are you storing more than what you need? And are you processing and storing what you need in a way that is going to be safe, secure, and compliant most of the time? So it's really a framework for you to see. But nonetheless, this is not, again, rocket science, not something new. So I've added a couple of resources. Mace is a good one. It basically is a solution from AWS that identifies PII in S3, so simple one. But also solutions like the find and forget. In Europe, the regulation requires you that you allow users to ask you to delete their data if they want, right? They can say, I want you to delete my data, and you need to be able to do that to be compliant. Find and forget is a solution for that, and likewise there are other solutions for the reduction in PII and all of that. But in summary, right? I don't have a lot of time. In summary, for data privacy, record only what you need, and if you are unsure, ask your legal counsel. Can I record this? Is it okay? And if it is, you move in that direction. The second big theme in regulation that we see is transparency and explainability. And within that theme, we see a couple of important points. The first one is disclosure. If you are using Gen AI in your application, for example, chatbots are a big one, right? You need to tell people they are interactive with an AI. You shouldn't mask it. You shouldn't just not say it, pretend it's a person. That's not good. You should, and the regulation asks you to say, okay, this is an AI. That's a mandatory requirement, for example, for the UI Act. So that's an important one. The second one is the same way you document software, and I know many people don't like to document, but it's important, but you still do. You will need to document both the model creation process and the data collection process, okay? And why is this important? Because depending on the workload types, and I will talk about some workload types after, they might audit you, or they might simply ask you, okay, what did you do? Give me the documentation. And you need to be able to prove that you are compliant. They are not the ones that need to check if you are compliant, it's actually the other way around. You are the one that need to prove that you are, okay? And the last theme around transparency and explainability is that you need to put contractual clauses in your products, and the ones you are using, let's say scope 1 and 2, you need to read and be very aware of them, right? Where is the data and how? To give you some resources here, there is an ISO there. So it's a very new ISO, the 42001-2023 is the new ISO for AI. I would recommend you get familiarized with them. It's a long document, so you need some time to do it. But I also left here some links, some resources. One, if you are building models of your own, you can use, for example, Clarify. That's going to give you an idea of your data. For example, are there biases inherent in your data or not? Is your data, does it have PII? So it gives you a good idea of the data before you use it, because after you use it, like I've said before, it's going to be very hard to just get rid of that. Probably you're going to have to build a new model. Likewise, the second link is really just a framework of best practices if you are using Bedrock and this type of more managed solutions. The third theme is a very interesting one, is automated decision making. So everybody likes to automate stuff. We are cloud people, so we like to automate stuff. AI is not different. It's starting to take decisions for us, but it can be dangerous, right? And that's why there's some regulation around it. For some specific workloads, you must have manual steps, especially for workloads that are taking important decisions. Examples could be social housing, credit scoring, right? So if your workload is doing this type of decision that can influence human lives, for example, right? You have to have some manual steps in between, and actually the regulation is asking for that. Another very important one is the right of appeal. I mentioned in a slide before the right to delete your data, but for AI workloads that make automated decision making, you are mandated to have a way for people to apply, saying, okay, this said I didn't have access to my credit, I don't think it's correct, I need a human to review it. So you need to give this right of appeal to people. I also leave you here again a link from the UK. They give you, it's a very nice article about what rights do people need to have in systems and how those rights map to AI, right? So what you need to give people, like the right of appeal. In terms of human intervention, again, this is very akin to what we did in the past with automation systems, so it's nothing new, but it's something to have in mind. Step function is an example of that, right? There's manual steps, but it's not very different. The fourth theme, I think, is my personal favorite, is regulatory classification. So in the EU, there are things, there's like a way of classifying applications, and the last level is a banned workload. So let's say you are doing mass classification of video surveillance, and you are not law enforcement. That's a banned workload, you cannot do that. You are forbidden to do that. Nonetheless, there are other classifications that are less risky, but they are still high risk. That would be, like I mentioned, credit score, right? Credit score, giving access or not to credit to a person is considered a high risk workload. So what you need to do here is you need to understand the relevant laws and regulations that you are inserted in, and make sure whatever application you are building, what would be the regulatory classification of said application, okay? And the best way to do it is really, my recommendation to you would be to involve legal counsel, because it's not really a technical thing, it's more a legal thing, and this is where the legal counseling in your CCOE can help. Number 5 is profiling. And profiling is very tied to the previous one I mentioned about automated decision making, but it's a little bit more broad. So in terms of profiling, it just means that if you are using individual characteristics to take decisions, and it again could be credit scoring, but doesn't need to be, that's usually not acceptable, right? It's kind of banned in sort of sense. Again, this is not a technical decision. Oftentimes technical folks are just choosing the best features for a model, or they are using all the data and then they find out that, I don't know, gender can help predict whatever other feature. So for them, in a technical way, it makes sense. Better accuracy, better recall, better metrics, doesn't matter, let's move ahead. But yes, the result here doesn't really matter if the regulation does not allow you to do it. So it's above a technical decision, and that's why you need to involve your technical counsel here, right? You need to be able to tell your technical legal counsel, I'm doing this, can I do it? And if I cannot do it, which part can I not do it, right? But profiling is a team that is very correlated to automated decision making. The last team is safety, and this is actually one that does not come from the EU. This is actually the executive order from President Biden. So President Biden did an executive order, I have the link here, it's the first link, you can check it out. And basically he said that any workload that can threaten life or property, safety in general, right? It needs to be, one, tested and independently verified. Independent verification is not really defined yet, or very well defined yet, should I say. But again, this is not very different from other systems that already exist, like airplane systems, right? Where you are mandated to have independent verification. Or for example, SOC 2 compliance, where you need to have an independent auditor. So we're not talking about something very new, but nonetheless, if your workload threatens life or property, you need to have independent verification and independent testing, okay? It's something to have in mind. How can you do it? Well, you can engage your lawyers here. I don't really have a lot of advice for you, and this is something that is increasingly changing, like I said. Before I close here, because this is actually the 6th team and we only have 2 minutes remaining, I will be available after this, so you can ask me questions individually. My goal with this talk was really to give you all these links and to open your mind to all the safety and regulations that are coming around, but this is ever changing and changing very fast as of right now. So you should be aware of that, and you should not just find it like fire and forget, meaning you do it, it's in production, let's forget about it. You might have something in production that gets banned after, you know, a week, a month, or a year. With that said, thank you. There's my LinkedIn, and I will be around for questions as soon as I am able to go around this. Thank you.